Hi, friends. So today I'm going to be giving a talk to other reproductive endocrinologists all about personal branding and social media. Hey, friends. So this is a talk that I am giving to other reproductive endocrinologists, a lot of them fellows. So those are REIs in training about to go be out on their own. I'm talking about social media and branding, and I am recording it for YouTube. So I'll put up pictures of some of my slides, but you are going to hear me now giving the lowdown on my thoughts on branding. Here we go.
So today, for our last talk of the conference, I'm very excited to introduce Natalie Crawford. Natalie did her residency at UT Southwestern, her fellowship at UNC, and she's the new co-founder, and director of patient experience and education at Fora Fertility, which is a boutique fertility practice in Austin, Texas. I wanted to have Natalie join us and talk to all of our fellows. Because she's really someone who I admire, someone who's passionate about educating, empowering patients, empowering women through social media. I think she's one of the pioneers that we all look up to. She's on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitter, has a podcast, has a YouTube channel, and I think really has driven that meeting forward. So I wanted her to come on and talk to the fellows a little bit about how we can learn more about personal branding and social media. So Dr. Crawford, thank you so much for joining, and please take it away.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. This is something I feel really passionately about, and I've learned a lot along the way. I did not start my social media journey until like 2 months before I stopped fellowship. And so, all through fellowship, I didn't even have a personal Instagram account. This was nothing even like on my horizon. But what started to fuel me was something probably all of us have experienced is seeing women sit in our office and say the same thing. I wish I'd known this earlier. Why does nobody talk about this? Why did I not know this information? And I started to realize you can only talk to so many people a day in your office. And I wanted to be able to spread this message from a larger stage. And so I have slides and I am going to share my screen so we can go through them together. So here we go.
Please do.
All right. So, building your personal brand. So, I think that social media is very important for the REI. And here is why, like specifically for our profession. We are not the ones providing most of the information online about fertility. Hands down, it is not us, the experts. So we've got questionable credentials of those who are popular on social media. We don't know who is controlling the quality of the information. Most of the time, it's nobody. And if you start looking at the media, doctors are not always portrayed in a positive light on the media. So if we are not giving a voice to our passion, who is standing up for us? And this is really, I don't like to call out people, but I think people who are not on social media do not understand. Here's three really popular accounts in the fertility space. None of these are physicians, but you have Dr. Hormone Expert, who's an essential oil doctor. She's a best-selling author and has a podcast. You have Dr. Hormone Doc, who's a speaker, wrote a book called Beyond the Pill. You've got another one who is a women's health expert and practitioner, best-selling author of Period Power. So I would go to any of these counts if I was a woman and I would look at them and I would think, oh, wow, they've got some great information. Let me see. And some of the things we see is that we are starting to see they are posting things about birth control being bad, adrenal fatigue, the benefits of castor oil, AMH doesn't matter. Here's some natural progesterone cream you can take every day. Why essential oils are your solution. And then what we're also seeing is that these are some of the things about our field, about the super babies, children conceived with the wrong sperm, tank failures, woman's parents, fertility doctor is her father. Big fertility makes billions mass producing embryos and destroying them. So obviously, we don't love this side of our field, but this is what sometimes the consumer is seeing. People who are not physicians giving information we probably would not agree with, and a media push that we're not always on the same team as our patients. And so I think that this should push you to feel compelled to get out there and talk about social media. One thing I hear all the time is people don't want to get on social media because somebody else is already doing it, or they're afraid of making a mistake, or they want to be the best. And I think that that is fair. If you're going to get on social media, you want to know why you're there and what your purpose is so you can learn how to do it. And I tell everybody, I don't care what your goals are. They can be to educate, inspire, empower, advocate, market, mentor. It could be creativity or to network or to brand yourself or grow a practice. These are all like really good goals, but what is yours? Why spend your time? Because it does take time. And these are mine. So when I first started social media, it was simply an Instagram account. It was in 2016. I wrote down these goals in my notebook. So I wanted to provide fertility awareness. I wanted to reach patients, and I wanted to make physicians more relatable. And then I also said girls in STEM, women in medicine. Maybe I could empower other women who were in the position that I have been in through medical training or on my own infertility journey. And I really think this is important. Your goals determine your audience, and you should go where your people are. For that, those of us who are REs, our audience, we're going to age out of our audience. So we need to be keeping track of what's popular in social media, because that's where new generations are going. If, however, you wanted to be an expert on menopause, then TikTok's not your place. You probably should go be on Facebook. So really think about who you're trying to reach and what their behavior is. But being on social media also shows that you are keeping up with trends, that you're high tech, you're modern, and in what fields you need to be more technologically advanced than in ours. So this is a concept in the social media world. So if you've never heard of creating an avatar, it is thinking about a person who you are trying to reach on social media. And so anybody who's on social in any type of professional fashion, you should be thinking about this. So what is their personal information? Name them, come up with challenges, and come up with their goals. And I mean this, literally come up with somebody. So this is mine, a 30-year-old professional modern millennial woman. I named her Megan, concerned about her fertility, who wants to be successful in her career and have a family, but doesn't know when or how. And so when I post things, I'm posting to Megan. Maybe not to me, but to Megan. I'm thinking about how is Megan going to interpret this post? And that is a good foundation when you're starting out to think of this other person. Where do they spend their time and what do they want to see? And just to like drag home that social media is helpful, I did a survey in 2016. I've presented at ASRM a couple of times, and this is when I was brand new on social media, but there were about 3,000 respondents. And this is our target audience, 93% age 18 to 44, and 98% women and very highly educated. They spent a lot of time on Facebook, Instagram. You can see this was when Snapchat was back in the day, Twitter, and not very much on blogs. But highest daily use really was Facebook and Instagram. And this is what surprised me, because I, at this time, didn't know that the most popular things, if you go from the bottom up, people wanted to see medical facts, behind the scenes as a physician, newsworthy research, and work life balance in clinical cases. They really wanted to know, what are you doing with your day, and teach me something. And so I think that's really important. And I'm going to dive into a few platforms and then talk about how to brand yourself and why that's important. Instagram is really big for our target audience. There's more than 1 million monthly active users. Most of them are under age 35. But how you use it is important. And my guiding principle is that people are lazy. So if in doubt, remember that people are lazy. You got to make it easy for them. Pictures grab attention. So pictures are what gets you likes, and people like people. They don't like books or offices as much as they like your face. And so these are some of my top posts, and you can see my face is in all of them. So having yourself be represented, you have to get over that, oh, I'm being a little humble or being shy. You got to put yourself out there if you want to reach people. And then text reaches your audience, so they engage with your words. Instagram is microblogging. So you can't just throw a picture up with nothing and expect anybody to engage. This is about community. And the first two lines is what's seen when people are scrolling. So remember, people are lazy, so they want to see a picture, they'll stop, they'll read the first two lines, and if it's interesting, they will stay. It's limited in characters, and hashtags can be helpful in searching. But so some of my most popular posts, you can see they are very personal. Here's what you would see on scroll: pictures of my family. I was pregnant when we bought this house, but not when we moved in. Or stop the shaming. Here I am right after my C-section. Feeling thankful today, thankful for these three littles who came to visit my first triplets. So, showing things that are behind the scenes or your own personal stories and educating through personal experience has been a way that I have been able to connect with an audience. YouTube is huge, and if everybody could go one place, it would be YouTube, but it's probably the hardest place. Instagram costs you $0. You take pictures with your iPhone, you put them on a free platform. YouTube is tough because you have to edit video, audio, you got to make thumbnails and upload it. However, it is where my avatar, Megan, is searching. So when Megan is looking for fertility information, she is not Googling it. The modern, younger person who is going to age into our care is looking for fertility related information on YouTube. It is the second largest search engine. I just started there. I am still learning, but it is should be a goal for people or practices because whether you like it or not, your patients are there. And then the podcast has been really eye opening. It is so easy and has changed my clinical practice, which is not why I started it. It allows people to consume information that they want. So, unlike Instagram that has an algorithm that you have no control over, you can search and listen to the menstrual cycle episode or age and fertility or girl quit your job or whatever appeals to you. And that puts the power back into the consumer. It is lower hanging fruit. It is much easier. Like, this is my mic and this is my setup. So, you don't need very much. It's very easy to learn to do a podcast. Clinically, I'm educating my own patients before they step in the door from the podcast, which is why I really think it has led a more educated patient group ready to take action into my office. And I feel like you don't have to do a podcast to try to get a million downloads or subscribers. You could do one simply to give to your own patients because we have limited time with each person. But hearing you explain information is highly valuable. So if you recorded an episode on what to expect at the first visit, and then you sent it to your patients before they came to your first visit, they would be more prepared. Or if you recorded IVF, and then after you had to talk about IVF because you know so much is hitting them at once and they leave overwhelmed, I tell all my patients, I have a podcast episode on IVF. Here is how you find it. And you can go listen more, and then we'll talk again and I can answer your questions. You are putting the power back into your patient, yet you're still a part of their journey. And I think that's really important. I didn't expect the fertility content to be very powerful on the podcast, but these are my most popular episodes. And so you can see age and fertility, the menstrual cycle, PCOS, naturally infertile, infertility 101. Some of my top 10 most popular episodes are all fertility related. The podcast is both fertility and female empowerment. And for sure, I thought empowerment would be the seller. Like, everybody wants to be empowered. So those will be the top episodes. Not the case. I mean, who would think menstrual cycle would be the number 2 episode ever? So I think that's very powerful that the people who see us are looking for information, and who is giving it to them if it's not us. And then TikTok is rapidly growing. I mean, it may end today, but if it doesn't, it is one of the highest engaging platforms and people convert. So when I have a TikTok video that goes viral, I suddenly will get thousands of Instagram followers or people all over my YouTube. It's gotten me featured in Good Morning America, and it's easy. So talk about the easiest thing to start doing is doing TikTok because it costs you nothing and then nobody expects it to be high quality or professional. This is my most popular video that has over 5 million views, over 5,000 comments on it, and it's about endometriosis. Yeah, that's not very complicated. That's very simple right there. Yet that got me people in my door as patients. It also got people on my accounts and interested in what I was saying. And it made Good Morning America interested. So nobody here should tell me that they can't do that because everybody can do that. And I think every single person listening right now, here is your one action step. You need to go buy a domain that represents your name, because if you don't own your name, somebody else will. And I promise you, your employers, your old employers, if you're like me and you've changed jobs, they will Google search your name to their practice even when you are not there. So at a minimum, get a website. It can cost you $8 because you're not popular, and it can just link onto your clinic or link onto your fellowship, or can have a landing page for where you practice. But it is space to grow, and it is a way to control your online presence. Because besides being on social media to educate, reach patients, grow your practice, or market yourself, Every single person who is a reproductive endocrinologist has an online presence. If you are not controlling it, who is it? Is it Jake? Is it Fertility IQ? Who is? Is it your patient reviews who's controlling it? Who is controlling your presence if it's not you? And I feel so strongly that this should be you because you are goal oriented. You've worked so hard to get here. So, why on earth would you at least not take this baby step of owning your name on the web? And this is mine. So, this is not fancy. This isn't Squarespace. I made it myself and I'm not a tech savvy person, or I wasn't when I made this. It just has my name and it's like linked to other things. But when it started, it was a landing page, which means literally it did nothing but took you on to where I was practicing. And that is enough. But you should have a website. I promise. Okay, so social media tips. Who is your avatar? What are your goals? Do not worry about numbers and don't outsource everything. I really don't love if you put your personal brand on the hands of a marketing company, it's going to be generic like everybody else's. You're the only one who can best represent yourself. And this is really crucial. I will tell you from my standpoint, I've gotten better job offers. I've gotten opportunities that I never would have had if I hadn't started to create my own brand. And so it is very, very powerful, especially if you run into the situation that over 70% of new graduates do, which is that your first job doesn't work out and you're looking for another one. If you can bring something unique to the table, that is helpful. Also, if your patients know where you are and how to follow you, priceless. Your contracts will say you cannot take your patients with you. So being able to not have to take them, they want to come on their own free will, and here's where you are, priceless. Organic growth takes time. It's not going to be overnight. I've had my Instagram for 4 years. It is not going to be overnight. And stop comparing yourself to others. I love when I see other fertility doctors in the social media space because the more of us who are sharing a message, we all have our own independent circles, the more people it is reaching, and then the better we are doing all together for our field. I am a representation of all of you. You are all a representation of me. If one of us goes rogue and is crazy, people will think the rest of us are too. So we really need to work together. And this is huge. Going against our nature is the MVP. And I had never really heard of this previously because it's like the opposite of being an RE. The MVP is the minimal viable product. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't edit it 12 times. You don't need the best light. Real creators put stuff out there. It's the minimal viable product. It is good enough. They see what resonates, they see what doesn't. They learn, they change, they do it again. People who are big in the social media space are constantly putting out work that's not perfect, and that is okay. But I'll tell you, that was a huge jump for me because that's not at all how we are trained. And just if you want to take it to a patient care metric, this is in 2019. So from quarter 2 to quarter 4, which is I started the podcast in quarter 1, I had increased volume of patients from 62 new patients to 76. And in Q4, I took 3 weeks of vacation. So you can see that's a huge jump in new patients. I have almost no patients that do not show up, which previously, prior to the podcast, I would. I think a lot of people do because fertility patients were wanting to get in. I have patients who will wait 6 weeks for an appointment. When we try to give them to a partner, they say, oh, I listened to the podcast. I want to see Dr. Crawford. And you are referring patients to yourself, which means they are highly motivated and they want to move forward. My conversion ratio to IVF, which if you go into private practice, you'll know about, went from 27%, which is admittedly low, but to 62%. And I practice the same. I didn't start being like IVF, IVF. I practice the same, but I have patients who came in who already knew unexplained infertility sucks and they don't want to waste time doing low tech treatment. And I had patients coming in seeking higher level care because they'd already heard about it from me and they already trusted me. So patients who are trusting, committed, and educated will go through treatment. They'll be more compliant. They'll be better patients. And if you're going to work in patient care, that's probably one of your goals. You want to get people pregnant. So you want them to stay with you and seek care. And these are a few patient comments when I posted on my Instagram, which obviously there's a huge selection bias. What do you think of doctors on Instagram or on social media? Extremely helpful and informative. It humanizes doctors. It allows for easier connection. I love it. It makes me be able to choose a better provider. It gives great insight into their areas of interest and educates. I love it. It's nicer to follow a doctor and get facts than Google and get misinformation. And most of these, if you look through, are all really positive. I think a couple people are like, I don't want to see TikTok on Instagram, but you can't please everybody all the time. And that is another part of social media that we all know. And so, what is your professional persona? It is your professional brand. It is who you are, what you say, what you stand for, and how you present you. It is you, and everybody has a brand, but are you using it to your full potential? And who is controlling it? And so, what does your online brand say about you right now? You should develop a brand and you need to protect it. And I will be really honest that before I signed my first contract, I had no brand. I didn't know that having a brand was an important thing. I didn't have an Instagram, a social media presence. And so I signed away my brand rights without a second thought. Branding yourself gives you professional power and leverage in the professional game. And in medicine, good or bad, familiarity is associated with trust. So if you are familiar to somebody, they're going to like you more. And that goes for patients too. You should be the one controlling your online narrative. I think I've driven that one home. And as experts, like we should be the fertility voices of our field. When you YouTube search fertility doctor, why are naturopaths coming up the top? That doesn't make sense to me. That is not how the narrative should go. But you got to put yourself out there. We can't agree to all these things, but then just sit back and want to be observers. You must start to understand that this aspect of connecting to your patients is part of why we all went into medicine. We want to help people, we want to help them on this journey of infertility. And that is done best by connecting with them. But so, building your brand, you got to be a little bit of a creator. Don't be perfect. It's okay to put yourself out there and brag about yourself in your best light and put time into it. You don't have to start everywhere. I think Eduardo listed all the places I am right now, but I started with Instagram and then I started going a little bit further over time. So you don't have to just like poof, go all the places, but think about who is your avatar, where are they, and then what should you create in that space. And don't be afraid to evolve and change because your goals may shift as you grow because people are supposed to change. So really think about what your goals are and then your look when it comes to branding. You should notice when you see some of my stuff, I've got a picture of me in a black dress that is everywhere. People can see that picture and they know that it is me. It's my podcast cover. It usually highlights most talks I give. I give it all the time for my bio photo. You should have consistent colors, font, writing style. People like to know things that they know. They want to know what to expect, and people like people. Don't be afraid to do the opposite of what we were always told in med school, which is keeping your personal and professional life separate, and understand that things take time. I absolutely hate when people say they do not have the ability to do this because they can't figure out technology or they're not creative. And I just want to say, probably the people listening to this, you're smarter than some of the smartest people I know. You are smart and accomplished doctors. People with way less education do this all the time and make a living. So there is absolutely zero excuse for why you can't buy a website, create a landing page, and have an Instagram account. No excuse. And so this is my brand. So this is the picture I was talking about. I've got the same font for my podcast. I've got this little color pink that is all over the place. I go by Natalie Crawford MD in all the places, even though I have an MSCR, even though, I've got board certifications and other things. This is my name in my online places. And you can see it's really consistent. I've got the podcast, the YouTube, and I've expanded to more things to try to reach people in different ways over time. And you do not have to do all those things. We're not competing against each other. But everything I do, I'm trying to tie it back to my main goals: fertility awareness and education, and empowering women. So those are the ones that I really look for when I try to create stuff. And then you're not the same person today as you were when you signed your contract, if you already have one signed, and you're not the same person today that you'll be next year. You have to understand that and give yourself flexibility and room for growth. Every contract you sign is binding. And if it doesn't say it in the contract, it doesn't say it in the contract. And so what really happens is in fellowship, you're so excited to be done. You'll sign a contract at the end of your training and you're tired. And you can't imagine that you'd ever want to have a podcast or a YouTube channel or write a book. And so you don't even give second thought to those things in your contract. But the biggest disadvantage to being employed is that if you do not protect yourself, somebody else owns your content. And this is one of my hugest soapboxes. So you need to lean into your brand, but even if you don't want to, Anything you create, you want it to be yours. You have worked too hard to let somebody else control your name. And you don't want to let other corporations or academia control your intellectual property because it really is your future. And like I said, you don't know what's going to come. You may change a little bit. It is always easier to protect something before it exists because once you are amazing and awesome, everybody will want a piece of you, I promise. And I have turned down very good offers, very good opportunities when I was between my first and second job because my social media platforms were bigger and everybody wanted a piece of it. And it was my line in the sand. This is non negotiable. And thank goodness that is the line I took because look how much I have grown in even a year and a half. And so, intellectual property, they are creations of the mind. Inventions, literary, artistic works, designs, symbols, names, images. You want to own your own mind creations. I couldn't say that loud enough. And you get 0% of the things you don't ask for. So if you just don't ever ask for something, you're never going to get it. This needs to be a priority in any contract you sign. Just because your contract doesn't say that it's someone else's does not mean by default the rights are yours. Absolutely not. It'll depend on the state you live in, the lawyers they have behind it. If they want to go and take own of your Instagram account and they want to shuffle it all to them, they certainly can if you haven't protected it. And I think that this is so important. Main things to consider if you're signing a contract is who has creative control of it. Is it you, or do you have to get approval, or can they, the employer, can they come in and say, I don't want you to post that. You can't post about abortion because it's unprofessional, or I don't want you to post about gun rights. Who gets to say what you post? What about things you may do? Okay, here I have some people say, oh, your Instagram's fine, but anything new you do once you work for us, we want a piece of that. And I said, no, that's still me. It's still me. Those are my things, the things that I want to control. I want to have creative control over all of my mind creations. And you should want creative control over your mind creations. Profits. If you're going to make money, who's going to get the money? If it's your work, it should be you. And what about other opportunities, affiliations, things like that? Do they have to get approved? Do you get to do them? Do you have to give all the rights to somebody else? What are your availability and what can you do? And don't try to hide. One thing I hear all the time is, well, this isn't in my contract, so I'm just going to do it on the side and I won't tell them and we'll see. And that makes you look shady. Don't be shady. Just be transparent. I want to educate people. I want to be on social media. I need my own IP rights. Otherwise, it's not going to be a good fit. I'm not going to be happy and I'm going to end up leaving. And so I'll take questions, but this is Fora Fertility, which is our brand new fertility practice in Austin. So I never thought that I would be co-owning my own practice. That really wasn't one of my big to-dos, but after being in the space, I learned that it was really important to me to practice medicine in the way that I thought was best and to be able to reach people in a really personalized nature as their physician. And so that is why we started Fora, and we've used a lot of these same branding ideas. If you follow the Instagram for Fora, which is at Fora Fertility, you'll see the same colors, the same logo. There's a lot of thought put behind every decision because the goal is that people can recognize who you are and they trust you from what you're putting out. So I'm going to stop the share and I'll go back to regular.
Thank you guys so much for listening to that talk. I hope you enjoyed it. What I'd really love is if you could follow me on Instagram at Natalie Crawford MD, and if you would subscribe to this channel. This channel means a lot to me, and I'm working hard to get this message out to more people. So please, please, please subscribe, leave comments, tell me what you want to hear, give it a thumbs up, and you can always find more on the As a Woman podcast about fertility education and empowerment. Thanks, friends.